The drama? I hardly knew her.
Are you serious?
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today's video is a review of The Drama, which is the latest A24 feature film starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson as a happily engaged couple that gets put to the test when an unexpected turn sends their wedding week off the rails. Before we get into any of the feedback, I will say from the very beginning that this is a film probably best experienced as unspoiled as possible. Some films, you watch the trailer and they more or less tell you the entire story, and that may or may not be a deal breaker for you. In the case of something like You, Me, and Tuscany, which is the next theatrical release I will be reviewing on this channel, that trailer gives you a recap of the entire film, and we're still going to go and have the time of our lives watching charismatic people fall in love in Italy. 100%. But for something like The Drama, part of the fun is simply going on the ride and knowing as little as possible beforehand. Now that being said, I would say that a film like this could be potentially divisive to the audience, depending on what they're hoping to get out of the film, their taste in films, and whether or not they're wanting something that is more commercial and safe and medium. This is not that type of film. To give you a small hint without giving away everything, not only is this an A24 film, one of the producers is Ari Aster. I wouldn't say that this is anywhere near as weird or disturbing as Ari Aster's films tend to get, but his name being attached should be a clue that this is not a corporate movie manufactured in a boardroom to appeal to the lowest common denominator. This first chunk of my review is spoiler-free, but then we will have a spoiler section. The timestamps have been labeled, and I will also tell you when I'm switching over to spoilers before I begin to share more of those details. The Drama introduces us to Charlie and Emma, a happily engaged couple who are busy in the commotion of pre-wedding preparations. With the gift of hindsight, I would say that the proximity to their wedding day is an absolutely essential ingredient to the story being able to move in the way that it does. It's a means of upping the stakes and tension before you even realize the turns that this story will take. Not long into the film's runtime, there is a very clear inciting incident that changes the entire trajectory of these characters' lives and puts them and their relationship to the test. This Rube Goldberg story of escalating tension and mayhem would not work without Zendaya and Robert Pattinson committing as well as they do. They have to dig into the deepest caverns of who Charlie and Emma are, and the stylish way things are filmed and edited together goes a long way towards elevating an often uncomfortable story into an experience worthy of the big screen. It's a weird film. It gets uncomfortable, but it also has a sense of humor about the mess that these characters get into. If I were to speculate, I do think this film will be divisive, partially for its subject matter, but also because of the fact that you have two extremely popular actors, Zendaya and Robert Pattinson, and you're dressing them up in their best wedding attire, so some folks might simply see that and think, oh, a romance movie starring two actors that I really like. But that's not really what this film is. It's a drama, pun intended, and it's an uncomfortable story that digs into the ugliest parts of these characters. It's the type of movie that's definitely an acquired taste. I would say that the film was good, I had some laughs, and the leading point of favorable feedback is, of course, the two lead performances. Now that being said, it's also not really the type of film that I would feel as drawn towards rewatching, so you can make of that what you will. I had a nitpick about one aspect of the story that there is absolutely no way for me to tiptoe around in this spoiler-free section, but I will say a bit about that particular part in the spoiler section once we reach that. And the only other nitpick I would share is that Zoë Winters should have played the maid of honor in this movie. And if you don't know about Miss Zoë Winters, well, let me give you the whole explanation. Zoë Winters is an actress that first grabbed my attention in a very underrated indie film called Jules. She played Ben Kingsley's daughter in that. And then last year, in another A24 film called Materialists, which I did review here on my channel, Zoë Winters had a supporting role in the story, but she acted circles around absolutely everyone else in that movie. It was ridiculous. Watching her in Materialists, all I could think was, wow, she is incredible. Put her in more things and in bigger roles. And then we reached The Drama. One of the first bits of promotion I saw for this film, The Drama, was a small clip from the film in which Charlie and Emma are meeting with their wedding photographer, and they're doing some test shots, and they have a very awkward energy between them, which actually is a good way of previewing the fact that this is not a whimsical rom-com or romance story. This is the drama, and it delivers exactly that, drama. Though I would reiterate again that there is a fair bit of dark comedy woven into the spectacle of it all. But Charlie and Emma's wedding photographer is played by Zoë Winters. And it's an extremely small role, and yet, while she was there, she still popped on camera because she is simply that exceptional. And I was exasperated that her role was so small, when I know that she would have absolutely devoured the role of the maid of honor. No spoilers about what material that character has to play, but it's a hell of a lot more than the wedding photographer did. And I found the actual maid of honor's performance to be a bit flat and underwhelming. Overall, I would say that the drama is for moviegoers who are not afraid of things getting weird and messy. If you want to watch a film about an engaged couple, and a film that is not particularly romantic in a way that the romance girlies are looking for, but it does deliver on the titular concept, the drama, then perhaps give it a go. At the very least, it is refreshing to watch something that is very obviously not a corporate product. No boardroom of tech bros or studio executives would have ever come up with this.
Am I sensing some nerves? A little camera shy? Let's do a little warm-up so we're feeling revved up and comfortable for your wedding day.
But now I am going to be getting into more of the plot spoilers. The drama opens with Charlie spotting Emma in a cafe, and he wants to approach her, chat her up. But he's awkward and nervous about doing this, so when she gets up to grab her order, he goes over to where she has left her belongings, and he takes a picture of the book she's reading, and then goes back to his seat so that he can look up this book and try to use the book as an opener, a way of initiating conversation. He approaches her, tries to share a fabricated opinion about a book he has not read. He only skimmed some basic information about the book on Goodreads, but she isn't responding to him. Now let's rewind a bit. The film had opened with a close-up shot of one of Emma's ears. And the reason for this, that gets quickly revealed as Charlie is stumbling through his attempts to talk to her, is that she is deaf in that ear. So she has her earphone in her other ear and she's listening to music, so she has not heard anything he has said to her. Then we cut ahead to Charlie working on his wedding speech, in which he plans to talk about their relationship and incorporate the story of how they met. He's talking through his speech and its many parts with his good friend Mike. Despite this clumsy meet cute, it did work well enough to lead to their first date, which is the next thing Charlie is talking about for his wedding speech that he's writing. On this first date, Emma was asking him about the book, and he clumsily attempts to talk to her about this book until he is forced to admit that he didn't read the book and was just trying to find an excuse to talk to her. And immediately I was repulsed, because why wouldn't you go and read the book before your date? And Mike, Charlie's friend, asks him the same thing. Charlie doesn't have a good reason for not doing so, but this instantly gave me the ick, and I was immediately thinking to myself that whatever bad thing or mayhem might ensue, I hope she leaves him, because it was just a major red flag to me. Mostly the lack of reading the book before the date, but also because he was still trying to maintain this lie and wasn't forthright until it was absolutely impossible for him to maintain this lie. As someone who has gotten back into reading a lot more over the last couple of years, I've just finished book number 51 for this year, 2026, and the next library books I will be starting on are The Crooked Hinge by John Dickson Carr and All the President's Men by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. Anyway, I was right to be icked out by his first date antics because, as it turns out, Charlie is avoidant when it comes to effectively dealing with things, and he's the one who emotionally spirals the worst in the aftermath of the story's inciting incident, which is during a food tasting and wine tasting get-together with Charlie, Emma, Mike, and Mike's wife, Rachel, who is Emma's maid of honor. They end up in a conversation where Rachel violates her husband's privacy by forcing him to reveal to the group the worst thing he's ever done, even though this was something that was supposed to remain just between the two of them. And this leads to both Charlie and Emma being pulled into this horrible game, or whatever you would like to call it, where they need to also reveal the worst things they've ever done. Emma is the last in the group to share, and she has had a lot of wine by this point, so she reveals that when she was 15 years old, she had planned on committing a school. She didn't go through with it, but just the fact that she had considered doing so is enough to send Emma's so-called friend, Rachel, lashing out with no attempt to have any sort of follow-up conversations with her, to try to get more information about any of it, even though, just to remind you once again, Emma never went through with it. Rachel doesn't try to investigate whether Emma was going through some sort of trauma, mental health crisis. She just immediately jumps to anger. This revelation of what Emma had planned on doing when she was a teenager is treated as a major bombshell, not just for Emma's relationship with Rachel, but more importantly, her relationship with Charlie, who increasingly spirals through the rest of the story as he struggles to figure out whether or not this is a deal breaker with Emma. There are the added dramatic stakes of having all of the wedding preparations already in motion. So the idea of having to call off a wedding last minute with all of the money already put into booking things and guests that have made their arrangements to come and attend, there's definitely a sunk cost fallacy swirling in the chaotic cocktail that is his brain and its 3 brain cells which are working overtime to try to figure out exactly what it is that he wants to do. Now, I'm not going to give you a full plot summary here because that's not what type of review this is, but the one small nitpick I had about the way they follow up on this big revelation is that once Charlie is asking Emma more follow-up questions in the days that follow, most importantly, with Emma now being sober as she answers these questions, I just felt as though the explanations of her teenage motivations and circumstances were lacking. One could perhaps make the argument that it's intentionally trying to keep the audience sitting in a more ambiguous gray area where you don't have a clean, clear-cut explanation that could easily tell you an obvious answer of whether Charlie should end his relationship with her or if he's being too harsh and she's clearly a better person now, so they should stay together. But for me as a viewer, my impression of the way things were written and presented is that I was ultimately left with more questions than answers in the way that things were being explained, as well as how they were depicted in flashback footage when Emma explains what her state of mind was, what she was doing, and why she was doing it. For one, the fact that she is a woman, immediately I have so many follow-up questions because of how much lower the statistics are for people who do that to be a girl or a woman. And they showed a lot of flashback footage of her being alone to mess with this gun while walking around at home or going into the woods to try to practice with it. This belongs to her father, by the way, and he is later revealed to have been in the military. So I had so many questions of how it is that she would be able to be messing around with this item as much as she was shown to be doing without her father knowing. And the way that he's presented at Charlie and Emma's wedding, he gave off the vibe like he would be the type to keep it locked up, not easily accessible. But there was so much footage of her as a teenager in different locations holding this weapon and even practicing using it in the woods. And that was actually what caused her to go deaf in one of her ears. What did her parents think happened to cause that injury? Part of me had initially wondered if maybe she had a bad relationship with her parents while she was a teenager. Perhaps they were cruel to her or neglected her. But once you eventually reach Charlie and Emma's wedding, Emma's parents are there, and there is no vibe that she has any sort of negative relationship with them. The wedding is awkward and uncomfortable, but that's because of the escalating tension and mayhem to do with this secret of Emma's and the ripple effects of that being revealed within their relationship and to their friends who were also present. As far as we can tell, Emma has a perfectly nice relationship with her parents, and they are none the wiser that she was that far gone as a teenager. I felt like I needed more information about what was going on with her as a teenager. Now, despite this long explanation of this nitpick, it's ultimately not enough of an issue for me to feel as though it makes the movie fundamentally broken. Regardless of what the most specific details are of Emma's teenage adolescence and how very troubled she clearly was, the drama is fundamentally a story about looking deep into the abyss of another person and deciding whether or not you still want to be with them. Can you know the worst thing about someone whom you're already on the cusp of committing to spending the rest of your life with, and still decide that you want to go through with it? And I suppose this film is merely the most extreme version of that they could come up with, and still somehow manage to maintain a certain amount of dark comedy throughout. So I suppose in the most unpleasant, explore the ugliest caverns of a person's interiority type of way, this film could be said to be romantic, but not to the people in the audience who will be put off by how humiliating the story is for both of its leads. Regardless, the subtleties of how Zendaya emotes an entire world of conflict Emma has swirling within her It's stunning work. And Robert Pattinson delivers all of the chaos of a man unraveling that we already knew he was capable of when we watched films like Good Time or The Lighthouse, but he is no less superb at delivering that chaotic energy. Although there are some lovely promotional images of them appearing every bit the picture-perfect couple, there are also some images that show Charlie with a messed up face and blood on his suit. And that is a far more accurate reflection of how hard these two spiral. If this film didn't have its dark sense of humor as one of its key ingredients, I think I might not have rated this film favorably. The demented humor is necessary to counteract the titular drama and make it something that you can have a chance of enjoying instead of being battered by the emotional damage of watching these two completely unravel. Overall, I liked it more than I disliked it. It is a weird one, and I will not apologize for being adamant that Zoë Winters should have played Rachel because she could have given that character so much more range and texture, but maybe if I keep demanding that Zoë Winters be given larger roles, someone at A24 will finally listen and push her audition tapes to the top of the high priority pile.